This is The Weekly on ClickOrlando.com with Justin Warmoth.
Good morning, I'm Justin Warmoth. Today marks 6 years since the mass shooting at Pulse Nightclub that took the lives of 49 people and left dozens of others injured. One of those survivors, Brandon Wolf, is here this morning to reflect on the tragedy and the emotions he feels when the country experiences another mass shooting.
Every day is hard. The last 6 years have been really challenging for me. I am so grateful to this community, to the home that I chose in 2008. I had no idea how much I would need this community and the people in it, and I'm so immensely grateful. But there's still a hole in my life where my best friends used to be, and you never grow beyond that. You grow around it, you learn to process it and live with it. But especially as we, get to the 6-year mark, it still hurts, like it always did. They're still so sorely missed. There's still missing faces at my birthday party. There's still, empty seats and missing laughs at dinner tables, and that will never be filled. And so it's painful for me. I know it's painful for a lot of other people, and I'm holding everyone in the community close.
Take me back to Pulse, the nightclub, before this all happened, and what it meant to you, and what it meant to so many others.
Yeah, Pulse is a safe space. And I know that makes people chuckle or, rib one another. I see it online. Oh, you need a safe space, as if to suggest that people who need one aren't tough enough to face the world as it is. But the truth is that safe spaces for people like me are lifelines. When I was growing up, home wasn't very safe for me. Church was certainly not safe for me. School was not a safe space for me. Nowhere felt safe. It was always under threat of bullying, discrimination, and potentially violence. Safe spaces were the ones that I created with my friends and my chosen family, and Pulse was one of those safe spaces. Pulse was the first place I think I ever held hands with someone without looking over my shoulder first. Pulse was one of those spaces where I could wear whatever I wanted to wear, look however I wanted to look, and nobody thought twice about it. And I know that Pulse was that space for so many other people in our community. LGBTQ people of color in particular in this country, and very specifically transgender people of color, are constantly under assault. What happened at Pulse is a daily fear in the back of our minds that something like that's going to happen, not necessarily in our safest space, but anywhere. At the grocery store, if we take a wrong turn down a street, if we end up in a part of town at night that we know we shouldn't be in, we're afraid that something like that will happen to us. Pulse was a safe space, and that was stolen from us. And I think that's why it's had such an emotional ripple effect for people like us across the country and really across the world.
That night, which was June 11th, obviously the shooting occurred June 12th, overnight. What was it? Just going out, just trying to enjoy regular night in Orlando? I mean, take me through, that part of it.
Yeah, everything about it was normal.
Yeah.
It was a long week for me at work. I had just been sort of through a rocky breakup, and so I called my best friends and I asked if they wanted to get a drink. They came to my apartment beforehand, and we had the same cocktails we always had. We listened to the same soundtrack we always listened to. We called an Uber around the same time we always called an Uber, and the club was normal too. It was Latin night. The music was as loud as it ever was. The same drag queen that always took my money at the front door was there to take my money that night. We went to the same bartender we always went to, stood in the same spot on the patio that we always stood at. Everything about it was normal and felt like the kind of safety that I had been told as a kid the world was never going to be ready to give someone like me.
How difficult is it, or do you even do it, go out and try to enjoy yourself in a setting like that? And what goes through your mind? Are you able to fully be present and be in the moment and enjoy yourself?
It's a great question, and people ask it all the time. All of us are different, and I know that there are people who have never been out again. There are people who will never go out again. I was out 2 days later. And for me, it's because I felt like it was a sort of resistance. That the man who perpetrated this crime, who charged through the front door, unloaded 110 rounds into the safest place I knew, wanted to scare us. He wanted to terrorize us. He wanted us to feel like we had to look over our shoulders everywhere we went. And I refuse to be owned by that man. I refuse to have my life upended by one person full of hatred and armed with a weapon I don't think he ever should have had. Instead, I see my life, my existence, my authenticity, my audacity as a form of resistance. And so I don't have trouble going out. I actually find it cathartic, as if I'm saying to the world that you can try as hard as you want to silence me or scare me or erase me entirely, but I'm not going anywhere.
I know that, as you mentioned, the victims or survivors handle this differently and go through this differently.
Yeah.
How have you been going through it? Who or what do you lean on when things do get overwhelming?
Well, it's another great question. 6 days after the shooting, we had a funeral service for my best friend Drew, and I was asked to be a pallbearer that day, and it was an incredible honor. I'm grateful to his mother for asking me to do that. And as we were pushing the casket down the aisle, I found myself gripping the side of it really tightly, and in reflecting afterward, it was because I didn't want to let go of my best friend until I'd found the right words to say goodbye. We got to the front of the church, and I looked down and I whispered a promise to him that I would never stop fighting for a world that he would be proud of. When the going gets really tough, that's what I think of. I think of the best of times with my best friend. I think of some of the worst of times when we were fighting, and I think of the promise that I made him that I would spend the rest of my life fighting so that his was not stolen in vain, fighting for a world that not just he could be proud of, but that all of us can be proud of. And on top of that, I have an incredible group of friends and chosen family who believe the same thing, who have committed to that same promise and pledge, and I lean on them in those moments when I'm feeling like all of it's hopeless, when I'm feeling this sort of dark cloud of June 12th hanging over me. I lean on the people around me and ask them to help give me the nudge I need to keep fighting.
Do you think he'd be proud of what you've done since then and how you've responded?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think, Drew was the best person I ever knew. He was the social glue. He was the one who was never afraid to challenge you, and also to ask you why you believe what you believe. He was the person who told you that it's okay to love yourself exactly as you are. He was passionate about creating this world where young people, no matter who they are or how they identify, can feel safe and comfortable being themselves. And I think he would be really proud to see so many of us continuing the work that he was passionate about.
And of course, so many survivors of Pulse still rely on resources to help them recover both physically and mentally. But over the years, that funding has slowly faded. Coming up, Wolf will give us insight on the One Pulse Foundation and the need for more donations.
This is The Weekly on ClickOrlando.com with Justin Warmoth.
Welcome back. It was 6 years ago today when many of us woke up to the horrifying news that 49 people were killed at Pulse Nightclub. The Central Florida community coming together to honor the victims and offer support to the survivors. But where do those resources stand now, and how do those survivors feel when another mass shooting happens in America? Here's more from my conversation with Pulse survivor Brandon Wolf. When another mass shooting happens, especially one like Uvalde, how does that affect you? What are the emotions you feel, and does it trigger your thoughts about what happened on June 12th?
It's so hard to predict how each mass tragedy is going to impact me personally, and I know that that's true for others. Sometimes when it comes up on the TV screen like the rest of the country, I'm sad and I'm heartbroken, but I'm able to process it. I'm able to think about what's next. Okay, how do we, comfort that community? What's next in the fight to try to prevent it from happening elsewhere? And then there are some tragedies that just wreck me, and I feel incapacitated for days. Parkland was one of those. Uvalde was one of those. And I think at least what I'm able to identify in myself is that I am particularly immobilized by shootings that impact children, because I know what they're going to go through. I know what their families are going through. And the idea that we would be inflicting that kind of pain the kind of pain that, to be honest with you, in the couple of days that followed Pulse, I thought might kill me. The kind of emotional trauma that I thought might not be worth living through. That we're inflicting that kind of pain and trauma on children absolutely breaks my heart, and I find it really difficult to process those.
I don't know how you have handled it. I'm sure you go through therapy and things like that, and there was a lot of funding. Not enough perhaps, but there was funding. I think it's kind of going away, not as much, and there are so many who still need it.
Yeah.
Survivors of Pulse.
Yes.
Is that something that you hear from survivors as well, friends who are there, not being able to have adequate funding to get the help they need?
Yeah, it is. I know that there are survivors, first and foremost, who are still physically disabled because of what happened. They should be taken care of for the rest of their lives. Our community should be standing together to take care of them. They didn't ask to go to one of the safest spaces that they knew and have their lives completely destroyed. And I've heard from lots of people that the mental health support has faded, that they're not sure where that's going to come from in the future. I'm really grateful to the city and to the center, the LGBTQ center, for all the work that they've done to try to keep those resources going. But the truth is there simply is not enough in terms of resource for people. And it's unfortunate that those resources can sometimes get caught up in the sort of political fray. It was last year that Governor Ron DeSantis vetoed funding for mental health support for survivors of Pulse Nightclub, and he did that on June 1st, the start of Pride Month, and just days before the 5-year remembrance of the shooting. So it's tragic that we have to keep scratching and clawing and screaming for basic support for people who made the decision to go out for a drink with their friends.
Right. You mentioned the governor, and I haven't had a chance to ask you your thoughts as we are in Pride Month now. I know that this happened before this, but during session, with the Don't Say Gay law that is now law. Obviously, it was signed into law by the governor, and what you think that does, and whether it sets back the LGBTQ community and future generations of kids who, are at this early adolescent stage, and what the impact that could have on them.
Well, I want to be more frank than that. This law and the rhetoric that has been used to propel it in the state of Florida and beyond are making things dangerous for LGBTQ people, kids and adults. First, there's misinformation about what this law does, what it says. People say, well, you didn't even read it. It doesn't say gay at all. I want to give you an example of why this is such a dangerous piece of policy. In second grade in Florida, students are required to complete a family tree project where they get a little cartoon tree and they put their family members on it and they do a presentation to talk about their families. If a student comes in with their 2 moms on a branch of that tree and another student says, well, that's weird. You can't have 2 moms. Where's your dad? And the teacher steps in and says, we don't talk about people like that. 2 moms as a family are just as valuable as anybody else's. It is quite possible that that teacher has now engaged in classroom instruction on sexual orientation and that the school could be legally liable for them simply affirming someone's family in front of the classroom. So you can imagine what kind of a climate that creates when schools who are already cash-strapped and terrified of a governor who has threatened retribution against them for stepping out of line anywhere, that they begin to pull back on inclusion. We've already seen it. They're tearing down coexist banners and rainbow safe space stickers. They're telling parents, same-sex parents, not to talk too loudly about their families in front of other students. They're, threatening LGBTQ educators that if they are out, if they have pictures of their families on their desks, that those things could be cause to have a different kind of conversation with administrators. We're already watching that across the state. Books about LGBTQ people being ripped from the shelf. Graduation speeches being censored, yearbook pictures being blacked out, all because school districts are terrified of what may be the ramifications of a very vague and dangerous piece of policy. And that leaves us in a place where LGBTQ people are stigmatized, where kids are told there's something wrong with their family or with them simply because of who they are, and it empowers the people who would bully them and commit acts of discrimination and violence against them.
I don't have kids, so from the outside looking in, it seemed like this was a major issue affecting elementary school aged kids. But I had never heard of anything like this happening.
Right.
But again, I don't have kids in this, between kindergarten and third grade, because the governor claims that teachers are indoctrinating and grooming, I think was another word, our youth. And that should be up to parents. Do you think that this was a bill that created a problem and fixed that created problem?
Yes, in an effort to help Ron DeSantis run for president in 2024. Think about where it came from. In 2021, Glenn Youngkin was elected against all odds in Virginia as governor, and he ran on this anti-CRT, woke schools nonsense, and won. And so Governor DeSantis put that agenda on steroids and shipped it into Florida, where he introduced bills to do the same thing, censor conversations about history and all of that, and added this component around LGBTQ people. And in using the smears that have been used against LGBTQ people since the dawn of time, think about what he was saying in an effort to build his resume to run for president. He's saying that LGBTQ people are contagious. That if we are seen and visible and affirmed alongside everybody else, that your kids will turn out gay or trans, that teachers are turning your kids gay or trans, which is absurd on its face. First of all, if sexual orientation or gender identity were contagious, everybody in the world would be cisgender and heterosexual because we're fed that content from the time we're born. Mm-hmm. The existence and visibility of LGBTQ people has nothing to do with whether or not other people are LGBTQ. They just are. That's just who they are. Mm-hmm. And our schools should be focused on protecting all of those students and respecting all of those families, treating every single person with dignity and respect, affirming students, especially the ones, by the way, who are at more risk for depression, anxiety, suicidality, which are LGBTQ young people. So to answer your question, this problem did not exist. This problem, I'm putting in air quotes, did not exist. The existence of LGBTQ people is not a problem. The existence of LGBTQ people is a part of the rich, vibrant diversity of the fabric of our society. It should be celebrated. It should be affirmed alongside everyone else. And the governor essentially turned the LGBTQ community into his political punching bag so he could score right-wing points on Twitter, see his name on a Fox News chyron one more time, and boost his bona fides as he tries to run for president.
And my thanks to Brandon Wolf for joining us this morning. For more information on the ceremonies happening today to honor the victims of Pulse, just head to clickorlando.com. I'm Justin Warmoth. Hope you have a great Sunday.